Welcome to the Mrs. R Relevant Daily Draft Podcast, brought to you by the Draft Professor. The Draft Professor is a group of podcasters bringing you daily draft podcasts and is home to the only dynamic mock draft simulator which allows fans to mock draft against other fans. The Draft Professor Simulator features a first-round challenge, 5 unique one-round drafts. The Draft Professor Simulator features a second-round challenge, 10 unique 2-round drafts. All mock drafts are always picking against the fans and draft analysts which use the simulator. Every mock, every pick, every time. The Draft Professor also features ranked players functionality, where you can rank your favorite players at every position. Optionally, you can add tiers to your rankings to show what round you have the players graded in. The Draft Professor also features Draft a Team functionality, which allows users to snake draft a team of 22 players to demonstrate your my guys, compare player strengths, and discuss draft prospects in a way no other mock draft simulator can. Thank you for tuning in to the Mrs. R Relevant Daily Draft Podcast. This episode will begin shortly. Welcome to Mrs. R Relevant, the Daily Draft Podcast. I am joined today by Josh. Josh, it's Monday. It's good to see you. How's your day been?
It's been good. It's been a decent day. Went out to the dinner with family. Back here now, going over the top 100 board on the offensive side for you guys. Next week, we'll be going over defense. So you're getting the full big board 1.0. Top 100 players on both sides of the ball for the next 2 weeks on this Monday podcast. We got way more content coming at you guys with everyday podcasts here at the Draft Fanatic, hosted by Jim himself. You get mock drafts every Friday. You get player intel on different positions every single day. No better place to find draft content here than the Draft Professor. But today, talking offense, talking the top 100, there's definitely some guys we need to talk about today.
Yeah. So before we get in, do you want to highlight for the audience, I guess at the beginning, how you're evaluating, or just you have a grading scale and you're presenting the players based upon your grading scale?
Right. So every position has a specific grading scale entailed to each position, going off of the Scouting Academy method, with grading each position on a 1 through 7 scale, 7 being elite, 1 being marginal. Each position has 11 different categories that you grade 1 through 7. I've evaluated that into a little bit of a formula. Still going to be rough, smoothing out the edges. This is my first year using an actual grade instead of just scouting reports and basing them one by one where I think who's better than who. But this year we have an actual grading scale to go off of. So we got around 55 players on offense that fit into the top 100 grades. So starting with quarterback, we're going to go quarterback all the way down to the offensive line and then back to the skills positions to end it out. But that's what we're going off of for our grading system. And everybody's grading system will be different. So to each their own.
Yep. Yeah, so I appreciate you going through the grading system so people realize this isn't just you picking the players that you liked. You're putting some level of objective analysis as you're watching the film, and you're, putting your ratings on players. Absolutely. And I also want to give a shout out to Jake. So Jake cannot be here with us today. Jake, I hope the birthing class with you and your wife is everything that you want it to be.
Absolutely.
So, but go ahead. Let's jump right in here. And there's controversy at the top. So tell us about your top 4 quarterbacks, and we can go from there.
So before we get into the elephant in the room, I know you guys are looking through the list and specific players missing off of that list. We'll get into that in a couple minutes. But we'll start 1 through 4. There's only 4 guys in the quarterback group that crack my top 100. The first guy, Cam Ward, he fits into that 25 to 35 range. So end of round 1, beginning of round 2, but this guy's going to go in the top 10 no matter what. There's a lot to love about Cam Ward. His toughness, his grit, his will to get better year after year, his off-schedule plays, his arm talent, his ability to throw with anticipation and timing, has the scrambling as well. Really, a lot of tools you like to see in a quarterback prospect. Has shown it at Washington State. And coming into the year, I was a little bit lower on Cam Ward. Like, is this guy going to really crack his way into the first round, really establish himself as a top quarterback in this draft class? And even though he's had a couple oopsies moments here and there this year, every quarterback in this class has this year, to be frank. This isn't an elite quarterback class by any means. Cam Ward has shown the most consistency and the most promise in my mind to start day one and be a starting quarterback in the NFL. Will he be a top 15 quarterback right away? That's to be determined. But I love everything that Cam Ward brings to the table with talent and character. So Cam Ward will be my QB1 undoubtedly throughout this whole process. And then QB2. Everybody's talking about Jackson Dart, Jalen Milroe, Shedeur Sanders, Quinn Ewers even being thrown up there. Will Howard won the national championship this year at quarterback. And I know that's not everything, and he did have a really bad game against Michigan. But look at the playoff run and look at every other game this year from Ohio State, and you can see why Will Howard was the reason that Ohio State won that national championship. Yes, were they stacked across the board? Absolutely, but they were stacked last year with Kyle McCord, and they didn't win it all. Will Howard showed the toughness, demeanor, and grit in the playoffs, and he showed that he was able to throw the deep ball with consistency at times during the playoffs. That was my biggest question on him. He's tough as nails. He can scramble, even though he's not the best athlete in the world. Hits the short to intermediate like it's nothing, can process really well. If you saw in the last couple games in the playoff run, he was able to understand pressures, blitzes, make audibles on the offensive line, really ran that Chip Kelly offense the way Chip Kelly wanted him to. And NFL GMs, coaches, they're going to see how he was able to take that offense and really be the driver of that and establish himself as a really good quarterback prospect. He sits in the 70 to 85 range for me, but he is my QB2. And if there's a quarterback in day 2 of the draft that a team is looking after, Will Howard would be my bet as the best quarterback left still on the board. 3 and 4, Jackson Dart, Jalen Milroe. The biggest questions going into the Reese's Bowl week, the week me and Jim went down, and I was a guy that had Jalen Milroe QB2 to start the week. Amazing athletic traits, elite runner of the football, has really good arm strength. And if you just turn on the Georgia tape with Jalen Milroe, that's the number 1 quarterback in this class. If you can give me that Jalen Milroe for the rest of the season going into the NFL, that's QB1 in my mind, no question. But the accuracy, the anticipation, the throwing mechanics, the footwork, the whole intricacies of being a quarterback is still really raw to Jalen Milroe. And that's a guy that's going to take time to learn how to play the quarterback position in the NFL. If you want him out there in a Justin Fields package type quarterback where you get him on designed running plays, he'll be absolutely elite. If he needs to spot start once every great while for an injured quarterback, I think he can be serviceable, absolutely. But this is a guy that needs to sit for a couple years, learn how to throw with his throwing mechanics to actually become a true quarterback at the next level. And Jackson Dart emerged himself as QB3 for me, a guy I was bullish on. He obviously ran that Lane Kiffin offense, very gimmicky, one-style read offenses. But that Duke game in the bowl game really shine some light for Jackson Dart of what his ceiling could be to me. A guy with amazing arm talent, can throw the ball with layers, can throw the ball with touch, can obviously throw it over the middle and short. He's a guy that needs to learn more complex offenses and understand that he can't just put the ball in harm's way as much as he does. Cam Ward has that problem as well, but Jackson Dart makes it at unexcusable times late in games, trying to do too much. He plays too much hero ball at times, and that's from lack of understanding full field progression reads or just trying to go out and make a play. But arm talent, footwork, everything is there with Jackson Dart, and I think if you give him a year or two, he can absolutely be a solid starter in the NFL. Won't take as long as Jalen Milroe to develop, but Jackson Dart is a very intriguing quarterback in the 3rd round to me. Will he go in the top 64? Probably. Will I be mad at it? No. But Jackson Dart has a little bit more work to do before he cements himself as a top 50 quarterback for me.
Okay. And who are the players that just missed the top 100 at quarterback?
So the players that are sitting at the 110 to 125 range for me is Riley Leonard, Quinn Ewers, and Shedeur Sanders. We'll address the elephant in the room now with Shedeur Sanders. Coming into the year, I loved everything about Shedeur Sanders, his makeup, his ability to throw the ball with a tight spiral, his toughness, his ability to go from a HBCU to Colorado. But there's a reason he's off this list for me, and it's the ceiling questions. If you give this guy the perfect offense, the Colorado offense they ran this year with as many RPOs, throws behind the line of scrimmage, one read throws to Travis Hunter, deep post to Will Shepherd, drags to LaJohntay Webster. If you get this guy with a clean pocket, he'll be able to make those throws short to intermediate. I do not trust his deep ball. I do not trust his arm strength. I do not trust his ability to hang in there when pressure is coming. Now, Colorado has had a depleted offensive line for the past 2 years, and they got better this year, but it's not all on them. Shedeur Sanders likes to drift back in the pocket, not really hang in there. He likes to get off of his 5 to 7 step drops and kind of just hang back at the line of scrimmage, keep drifting back, and he really doesn't allow protection to do his job, throws off the timing of his routes, doesn't really hit anything with anticipation when the pocket isn't there for him. I don't think he has the elite traits you were looking for, like a Caleb Williams last year, who kind of did the same thing, never really worked in structure, but he had the elite scrambling, throw-off platform, being able to make every throw in the book. Shedeur Sanders just simply doesn't have that. I love Shedeur Sanders as a person. I think he can be a starter-ish at the NFL, but what kind of starter are you getting? To me, I think you're getting a Teddy Bridgewater at best. Somebody that will be serviceable, but it won't take you over the hump. If you're talking about guys that you can look forward to in the next couple years and say who's going to be a better quarterback prospect, for me, it's Will Howard, Jackson Dart, and Jalen Milroe as of right now. You can have that conversation with Riley Leonard, Quinn Ewers, but everybody has Shedeur Sanders as a lock of a top 10 pick. Will he go there? Probably at the end of the day, but they're just ignoring the simple issues that Shedeur Sanders has had in his tape for the past 2 to 3 years, and they highlight the hell out of it with a quarterback prospect like Quinn Ewers, who has the traits to actually get himself out of those bad habit mistakes. I don't think Shedeur Sanders has the traits to get himself out of those bad habits he has.
Cool. So that was pretty spicy. So we started off spicy, and now we're going to go to some hog mollies. We're going to get your offensive linemen in the top 100. So tell us about your centers.
So only 2 centers cracked this list. Really only 1 center for me. I have Marcus and Bell graded as an offensive guard, but truly he can play all 5 positions at the next level, if you ask me. Super athlete, the best athletic offensive tackle that I have studied in the past 3 years of doing this myself. Has unbelievable hip turns when you're staying at an offensive tackle, can really stay with inside counters, can stay with speed rushers, really good in his vertical drops. Just a natural athlete that has powerful hands that can stick on to anybody if you stick him on as an offensive tackle. You move him inside the guard, he'll be an elite zone blocker. He'll be able to move to spots and hit his spots and flip his hips 180 and seal off backsides. He'll be a puller for you at the next level as well. That's why he translates to center well easily. A guy that can work on his mental processing, played at Purdue, but have really good production for playing at such a low-level Power 4 school. And, of course, he has some work to do when it comes to the strength profile and holding on to gap-to-gap run blocks. But if you're talking about an offensive lineman with the most upside in this draft, for me, it's Marcus Mbao, and I don't care where you play him. Just get him on your roster. And Jared Wilson, another freak athlete at the center position. When you look at the combine next week, Jared Wilson is going to jump up of everybody's board because he is just going to outrun everybody at the combine. The fastest offensive lineman in this draft. Really young, really raw, but he showed flashes this year of an all-around game, being able to have the steady base as a pass protector, being able to move people off the line of scrimmage, being able to run block well in zone concepts. This guy is a ball of clay, and if you get him developed properly, this could be a top 10 center in the NFL, no question in my mind. Just hasn't put it all together yet. Still really young, still really new, like not really there all put together at the position yet, but a guy you can absolutely bet on the upside for, and he's a good character guy that can process things really well at the line of scrimmage.
Cool. And then we have your tackles on the left and your guards on the right.
Yeah, so offensive tackles and offensive guards this year. you got to be tricky with them. You got to pick and choose your right ones because there's a bunch in the litter that are going to go top 75, but some are better than others and some are refusing to accept that. We'll start with the offensive guards on the right side of your screen. Donovan Jackson is the only guy I have going in the first 25 picks, true first round grade for me. A guy that was a really stout pass protector as a guard, moves to tackle as a need for Ohio State, and plays absolutely well there. When you're talking about mental processing, this is the guy in the draft that has the best mental processing in both the run game and the pass game for the offensive lineman. Does he have the power presence as a gap blocker if you keep him as an offensive guard compared to some of these other guys? No. But mental processing and all-around pass blocking ability, base timing, being able to execute blocks at the line of scrimmage, even though he doesn't get the most movement. This is the most safe floor prospect I think there is at the offensive tackle position. Plug-and-play starter for the next 10 years, no question about it. Tyler Booker is right there as well at first and second round grade for me. A guy that has some issues in his pad level, his base and timing, but a powerful mauler, will go at you 100% of the time. Really strong hands and pass protection. Just a guy you want his character and toughness on your offensive line. Even if he goes through some rough patches as a rookie, give him some time. This is a guy that will be a force at the next level, in my opinion. Gray Zabel is the only other offensive guard that I have a first or second round grade on. We saw him at the Senior Bowl, and he flew up everybody's boards. I was a naysayer on Gray Zabel as well at first. I didn't think he had the power profile to hold up as an offensive tackle or an offensive guard. Boy, was I wrong. The best pass protector at the Senior Bowl, can move like no other. His expertise is in zone blocking. I think this is a bulletproof starting center at the next level. I think this is bulletproof starting guard at the next level. We'll see how much more he develops, but I definitely see a multiple contract starter in Gray Zabel. Will Campbell comes in as number 4 on my offensive guard rankings, a guy that everybody has mocked in the top 10. We've gone over him in a bunch of other videos that we've done, but Will Campbell, if you get him developed right, absolutely warranted a top 10 pick. I think there's balance issues if you keep him out as a tackle. He plays with too high of a pad level. I think there's holding issues, especially when you get him out on the zone blocks. It wasn't as good as a gap blocker in the back half of the season as he should have been. A guy that can recover well, has really good feet, sticking him out as a left tackle. It would be interesting to see if he stays at a left tackle, but I think he's too susceptible to inside counters if he sticks out there. We'll see how quickly he'll make the adjustment at guard at the next level. Really love the character of Will Campbell, though. I think this is a guy in the right system, could be a solid starter, but I do see some bust in Will Campbell, so be cautious, people who pick him in the top 10. Jonah Savanea, offensive guard 5 for me. This is Bill Sparks' guy, so I will not say anything negative too badly on Jonah Savanea, but Jonah Savanea is an absolute freak build, 6'6", 340, can stick out at right tackle for me. I have him graded as a tackle, but absolute strong mammoth of a human being, has the feet to recover as well, has some holding issues, really doesn't understand use of hands consistently to the chest as much as I liked him to. He showed some really good cross chop swipe down ability, but a guy you just want on your offensive line, even if he's not going to be an upper echelon offensive lineman. And then the 2 Georgia guards finish it out for me, Dylan Fairchild and Tate Ratledge. For me, Fairchild has the most upside. I think Ratledge is a plug-and-play starter day 1, but the injury history and overall ceiling is a question for me for Tate Ratledge, but proven starter at Georgia, a real leader on that team. But I really do think Dylan Fairchild's strength and pass blocking presence gives him a little bit of a notch over Tate Ratledge for me. You got any questions, Jim?
So what? 16 plus 2. So you have 18 offensive linemen in your top 100?
Correct.
Do you think of that as being average, strong, or weak?
I think when you start getting into day 2 of this draft class, there are a lot more guys compared to other draft classes that you have a cream of a crop pick to. What I mean by that is in other round 2 or round 3, you're trying to pick guys based on projectability, upside, not really showing anything that you can start them day 1. I think in this group, especially even with offensive tackles that I have graded in round 1 who are going to fall to round 2, you're going to find some quality starters in the top 100 picks, especially at the offensive tackle position. So we'll start with number 9, Ozzie Trapilo, the offensive tackle out of Boston College. Some guys have him as an early day 3. I see him cracking that top 100 for me. Really good size, solid feet mobility, being able to get into his vertical sets. Plays with too high pad level at times. Same thing with Will Campbell. We'll see how much he can develop as a true down-to-down gap blocker. He's a solid zone blocker at best. He won't be the upper echelon zone blockers of the world, but love his arm length, love his size, and I love his ability for his feet to slide in pass protection. Guy that needs more development. I wouldn't start him day 1, but somebody that I think can start down the line. Emory Jones comes in as number 8. I think he's an offensive guard at the next level. Super powerful blocking presence, has a really good anchor. Just really has to clean up the sound fundamentals of pass blocking down to down, especially if you move him into the inside. He loses mental processing at times. A 3-year starter for LSU, so he's trusted. Let's just see how quickly he adjusts to the NFL level. Cam Williams, same thing. We have copy and pasted with Emory Jones. You saw the susceptibilities in the top games that Cam Williams played this year against Georgia and the other upper echelon teams. He got beat. Yes, he is young. Yes, he is raw. Yes, he is nuanced. This is a guy I kind of compare to Amarius Mims a little bit. Even though Amarius Mims was a better prospect by any means, Cam Williams is on that same amazing build, one of the true offensive tackle builds in this class, and he's going to get drafted highly because of that. So more concerns on my part with Cam Williams, but we'll see how high he goes in the draft class. And his teammate, Kelvin Banks, is number 6. Kelvin Banks is just outside my top 50 and a guy that I absolutely love to see when you give him time to get into his vertical sets. This guy can be a superb pass blocker in the right scheme, but he does have balance issues. He does have mental processing issues, and he had a lingering injury to end the year. If he improves his run blocking and his balance at the point of attack, this is no doubtably a first-round player in my mind, but he has to improve that blocking for me in the run game. Wyatt Milam is a guard for me, but he comes in slightly above Kelvin Banks. Was a little bit underwhelming at the Reese's Senior Bowl, but a guy allowed 0 pressures this year on the left side of that West Virginia offensive line. His whole coaching staff speaks highly of him. Really sound mental processor, and I love his toughness. He loves to finish every single block. Even if the technique's not down on the inside yet, this is a guy that will go 100% every time on every play, and I will take that out on my offensive lineman any day of the week. Now we move into the top 4, and these are the 4 guys I'm most excited about. Ariante Ursary at number 4 was my offensive tackle 1 for a while. He moved down the board a little bit just because he's not the most superb athlete. His foot quickness isn't there compared to the rest of these offensive tackles we'll talk about, but a strong anchor, strong use of hands, strong pass protector, can move people off the line of scrimmage in gap scenarios. I don't have any issues with his leverage at all. It's just the foot quickness for me, bumps him into that round 1, round 2, but one of my favorite offensive tackles in this class. Josh Connolly, number 3, the absolute opposite. An amazing athlete, can shuffle his feet with anybody, has really made an improvement in the run game this year. I think he doesn't have the strength profile compared to the top 2 guys we're talking about, but Josh Connolly, absolute monster of an offensive tackle. Don't look at the Mike Green tape. It will steer you away from what the actual tape is, I promise you. And then Amar Membu and Josh Simmons, offensive tackle 2 for me. Josh Simmons, if he didn't get injured this year, would be a top 10 pick lock. There is not a better combination of run blocking, pass blocking, mental processing, and athleticism in this class with Josh Simmons. I think you can move him inside the guard as well, and he might even be better there. But he's a plug-and-play starting left tackle day 1 in my mind if you get that health right. And Amar Membu had one of the better half of the back half stretches this year for Missouri. Really strong zone blocker, can shuffle his feet, can handle power well in the pass game. Is solid in gap blocking. Let's see if he can improve that as well. He's definitely serviceable at the next level. But those top 4 guys are starting offensive tackles for me at the next level. Wyatt Milam is a starting offensive guard for me at the next level. And then Kelvin Banks is where we start to get into, maybe, but really strong offensive tackle class.
So how high do you have Simmons on your board?
Simmons, let me look at it right now. He is player number 17. Now, keep in mind with the offensive guys we're talking about, I have 3 players inside my top 16. Travis Hunter, who's both, Ashton Jeanty, and Tyler Warren. So Josh Simmons would be my offensive player number 4 in this draft class, but that just goes to the defense. There is 15, 16 guys on defense that are in my top 18. So it just speaks to the volume of this draft class.
Okay, so now we get to do some of the fantasy football positions. So you have 6 tight ends in your top 100. So tell us about them.
We'll start with the top dog, obviously. Put it in preference, this is not last year's tight end class. Last year's tight end class had a unicorn named Brock Bowers that we will never see again, the best tight end prospect that has ever been in the NFL draft. But Tyler Warren's a really good first-round prospect, and it's not just the contested catches. It's not the body control. It's not just the hands. It's the run-blocking prowess. This guy can move people off the line of scrimmage. He plays with that toughness. He plays with that physicality after the catch. For a guy that doesn't have good athleticism, good separation quickness, he makes up for it in every other facet of the game. Plug and play starter day one for me, starting tight end. I think he's a top 15 tight end right away when he gets into the NFL. And I know it's high praise, but this is a guy that I see eerily similar to Dallas Clark at the next level. Same numbers, same style. He's a little taller. He's a little more athletic on those jump ball catches. But Tyler Warren is an absolute plug-and-play starter, especially as a run blocker. Colston Loveland had a little bit of a down year for tight end too. Still an amazing separator at the position. He dealt with terrible quarterback play all year, so I tried not to harp down on him too much. Good athletic ability to be able to contested catches and really contort his body for balls outside of his frame. Can really separate better than anybody else in this draft class, not named Elijah Arroyo. He has a little bit of concentration drops, and I question how much of a mover he will be at the line of scrimmage. But let's be real. Jim Harbaugh at 23 is either taking Colston Loveland or Kenneth Grant. So get used to it. Hopefully Colston Loveland finds his way in a Chargers uniform. Elijah Arroyo, tight end 3 for me. A guy that I did not think would lead up to the hype going into the Senior Bowl. And boy, I was wrong. I was a Harold Fanden tight end 3 guy all the way. At times, he was my tight end 2. But just looking at them both on the field together, Elijah Arroyo clears him in almost every capacity. Such a smooth mover, the best athlete at the tight end position. Blazing speed, can outrun anybody. Injury history is a big question mark for me. This is a guy I see very similar to Evan Ingram at the next level, but an absolute monster, yards after catch threat, really good speed, and just an amazing athlete at the tight end position. Moving on to Harold Fanden, tight end 4. Explosion games from Penn State and Texas A&M coming out of Bowling Green this year. Absolutely put himself on the map to begin this season. A guy that's a kind of a funky mover. He doesn't move in your prototypical way for a tight end, a little bit clunky at the stem of his routes, but hey, to each their own. He absolutely murders people in one-on-one, can win with physicality, can win with separation quickness, can win with speed. He had over 100 catches, 1,500 yards, I believe, this year. Absolute pass-catching threat at the tight end position. I question how much of a blocker he will be at the next level and or if they ask him to be a blocker at the next level. But this is your power slot wide receiver, inline, not inline, outline tight end that can absolutely be crucial for teams on third down. And then you start getting into high-end tight end 2s on an NFL team, moving into low-end tight end 1s. Mason Taylor is a guy I think that can develop into a starting tight end, has those genes from his dad, Jason Taylor, has those athletic prowess, really long arms, really sound blocker at the line of scrimmage, can make those athletic catches, those long out-of-body catches. Let's just see how nuanced of a route runner Mason Taylor can develop into. And Gunnar Helm was Quinn Ewer's safety blanket all year, really took a massive jump in that Texas offense. A guy that's going to be able to work those short to intermediate parts of the field, really tough, like a lot of these tight ends are, really well built. A guy that doesn't have the amazing speed and amazing separation, won't shake people out of their boots, but just a really sound fundamental tight end that can absolutely start if needed to in the NFL. So those are the only 6 that crack my 100. And let's see if anybody else is close. Let me go to my board real quick. I think those are the only guys that would stay in the top 100 moving forward. The next closest guy I have is Orlando Oradon Gradison,
Oronde Gadsden.
Yeah, the wide receiver-ish tight end out of Syracuse.
Did you know that his dad played in the NFL?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
His dad was almost a true wide receiver with amazing arm length. Oh, he can make.
Oh, definitely. I mean, his dad is probably a little bit before your time. I mean, you're young enough to be my son. So.
Yeah.
Okay, so a couple questions on the tight end. So there's more than one type of tight end in the 6 that you have listed.
Mhm.
If a team needs an inline tight end, which of these guys are they looking at?
They're looking at Tyler Warren, but he's not going to be there. So for me, it would be Mason Taylor or Gunnar Helm in the 3rd round, getting a little bit of a value. Elijah Arroyo and Harold Fannin to me are more of your 3rd down tight ends, getting them out on the perimeter, letting them work those corner routes, intermediate drags, the whole 9 yards.
And where do you put Colston Loveland in those buckets?
Colston Loveland's just kind of a do-it-all. He has shown the ability to block at the point of attack at the line of scrimmage, but I think he needs to bulk up at the next level to really hold up against those stronger defensive linemen. But it's kind of a give or take for me because I love his separation quickness. I love his athletic ability, and I don't want him to lose that. So I think he can be a serviceable blocker at the line of scrimmage, but definitely not an upper echelon top 20 inline blocker, if you know what I mean.
Got it. Okay, so now we get to running backs, and I know that we plowed through probably close to 40 running backs in October, November, and December.
Yeah,
and we've taken those 40 running backs and we knocked it down to a list of 13. So go.
It was hard to knock it down to 13 as well. Let me pull up my running back board right now. I have close to 27 guys that I believe should be top 150 players in this draft class, close to it. So when I say this running back class is deep, it is deep. We've left guys off this list like DJ Giddens, Damian Martinez, Trevor Etienne, LaQuint Allen. Like, there's still so many guys, but these guys right here, I think can be starters day one at the NFL level, if not really good 50-50 backs. Start with the obvious, Ashton Jeanty. He's my number 3 player on my board. If I have to explain Ashton Jeanty, go to a different podcast. You'll be able to get that explanation from someone else. Omarion Hampton. Think about it as a bell cow running back, really good strength, really good balance, really good mental processing, can bulldoze people at the line of scrimmage. Kind of an old school throwback running back, serviceable in the passing game, but a guy you can give it 20, 25 times to in both gap and zone schemes, and he'll get you close to 100 yards every single time. Travion Henderson gets above Quinshon Judkins for me. Quinshon Judkins was my running back 2 for a while, and Travion Henderson just showed more of an ability in a pass blocking scenario and on 3rd downs as a pass catching back. And he's more explosive than Quinshon Judkins to me. So he gets a little bit of a notch over Quinshon, but you can make the argument for either or because Travion's got the injury history. But Quinshon Judkins is the David Montgomery to Travion Henderson's Jahmyr Gibbs, if you know what I mean. Just an absolute bruiser of a back, can run people over, truck people, good athletic ability for his size. Toughness is off the charts. A guy that I absolutely love for the past 2 years. And just because this is a stacked running back class, it's still a top 40 player on my board. And Caleb Johnson is a top 50 player on my board as well. A little bit of a victim to this running back class. I think if you put him in last year's running back class, he's RB1, and it probably isn't even close. Really good speed. One of the best zone running backs in this draft class. Can give you value in the passing game as well. I think this is a guy that's going to have to learn a little bit more compared to the 4 guys that we've mentioned above, translating from the college level to the pro level. But his athletic traits absolutely stack up as a top 15 running back in the NFL someday. Devin Neal, my fan favorite, going back all the way to October. And I've seen guys like Scouted NFL, who I trust really well, have Devin Neal in his top 50. He's not in my top 50, but a guy that I absolutely love as a running back. Compare him to prime Philadelphia Miles Sanders, a guy that can go east to west, north and south, has the elusiveness, has the pass-catching prowess, can be a solid pass blocker as well. I think this is a guy, once you get him into the 2nd level, he can make anybody miss and attack angles and get to the end zone fairly easily. This guy will have so many breakaway runs at the NFL level. It will be very surprising to a lot of people who don't know about Devin Neal when they see him in the NFL. Cam Scatterboot comes in as RB7, a guy that we absolutely love talking about in our running back series. We had him lower, though, but God, the only reason he was lower is because he's not the athlete compared to the rest of the 13 running backs on this list. But at some point during the playoff run, I said, I don't care. I saw this guy run a 50-yard go ball, run 150 yards, broke every single tackle against Texas like it was another Big 12 game, just absolutely nothing to him. I don't know what Cam Scatterboot does before every single game to get him in that state of mind, but that is rare. And I want that on my NFL team. I don't care how mediocre of an athlete Cam Scatterbo is. He makes up for it in every single other facet when it comes to the running back position. Elite toughness, just get the guy on your team. You will not regret it one bit. And then we got guys, running backs 9 through 13, who sit in my round 3, can be interchangeable. But we'll go over them really quickly. Tosh Brooks, the bowling ball out of Texas Tech, has really been underappreciated in this draft class because he's not the elite speed guy. He won't shake people out of their boots. But you'll be surprised by this guy's athletic ability. He's able to run routes out of the backfield. He's able to hold up in pass protection. He's able to make people miss in the second level with his elusiveness, not only being a bruiser running back. A guy that's Texas all-time leader in rushing, Texas Tech's all-time leader in rushing, if I'm not mistaken. Just an absolute bruising bowling ball back. You can get him on early downs, and I think he can be a 3-down back at the NFL level. Ollie Gordon, if you asked me before this year, he's RB3. If you ask me now, he's RB9, and during the season, he was more RB15, RB16. But we saw him at the Senior Bowl, and yes, he had a really underwhelming year, but it's still the same player. He might have lost a little bit when it comes to vision at the line of scrimmage and patience, but a guy that can win with power, win with speed, win with elusiveness, and he's shown the ability to run for over 1,500 yards. This is a Doak Walker Award winner, and yes, he had a really bad year, but we can only knock him down so much, and we can't completely forget about the year he had in 2023. So he finishes at RB9 for me. RB10, Dylan Sampson, kind of on that Jalen Wright train for me last year. Same guy, coming out of Tennessee, really elite speed. That's going to be his calling card at the next level. Really good pass catching running back. He shows the vision as well that Jalen Wright didn't have coming out. I would have Dylan Sampson over Jalen Wright if you have both of them in this year's draft class. But a guy I think he needs to work on his pass blocking and add some power element to his game. So knocks him down a little bit for me. Kyle Monangai is the guy that won't have the elite speed, won't have the elite burst, but he has really good vision at the line of scrimmage. He has really good mental processing. He's not as tough as Isaiah Pacheco, but he comes from that same breadline of just tough, hard nose. I'm going to run into your chest. I don't care about it. And 0 career fumbles in 4 years at Rutgers. That doesn't go unnoticed. That gets you a spot in the top 100 for me. And then Brashard Smith and RJ Harvey hang at the back end of my top 100. A guy that I compare RJ Harvey to Tyjae Spears and Brashard Smith to Tony Pollard. So think of that Tennessee backfield with Brashard Smith and RJ Harvey. RJ Harvey can take the top off of any defense when he gets into the second level. Smaller stature of a running back, more well-built than Tyjae Spears. He has more power elements to his game. You'll obviously get him involved in the passing game. And Brashard Smith, the converted wide receiver over to running back, has better vision to me, is able to make people miss in the second level a little bit better with elusiveness. And he's going to be a better pass catching back than RJ Harvey to me because he comes from that wide receiver background. Absolutely amazing production this year for SMU and was one of the reasons why they got into a college football playoff spot. So you can give me 7 other names to put in this top 100. I would not be mad at you. This is an incredibly deep running back class.
Cool. So a couple questions here. So if a team needs a 3-down running back, would you say all 13 players on your list could be a 3-down back, or would you eliminate, like if you're the Dallas Cowboys and you need a 3-down running back, is there anybody on this list where you say, they wouldn't be a 3-down running back for Dallas? Or, well, we'll start with Dallas, but then I'm going to throw a couple more teams at you.
If we're using Dallas as the example, the only guys I would say I wouldn't trust fully as a 3-down back coming in is Dylan Sampson, Brashard Smith. Those are the only 2. I see those guys more as really good 50-50 backs. Don't give them 100% of the snaps. Some of these guys lower on the list are going to be lower end 3-down backs, but I mean, I don't see a world where you can take most of these guys off the field. This is a really good running back class.
Yeah. So, and those were going to be the 2 guys I was going to pull out, and I learned that from listening to you and Jake.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So that's my gift. Like, I'm not taking notes. I'm remembering what you said when you gave the report.
Because when you
next question, if you're a team like Kansas City, where they're going to probably throw more than they're going to run, do you think there's any backs on this list that you wouldn't take if you were Kansas City? Like Omarion Hampton, does he fit what they do?
I think he fits in general just because when I look at the Chiefs, I don't really want a pass catching running back. I want them to be able to establish themselves in the A and B gap and absolutely run under center.
Okay.
Because if you think about it in the Super Bowl, everything was out of shotgun. Everything was either a dive to the middle or a zone inside outside, and it absolutely got bottled up. Even if the offensive tackle play wasn't that well, they didn't have the vision and explosiveness behind the line of scrimmage. They were giving Kareem Hunt 60% of the snaps. And I'm sorry, I love Kareem Hunt, but I would take almost all 13 of these guys on this list over Kareem Hunt at the next level. So just get them anybody who could be explosive.
Okay, and then I guess one last thing I like pointing out whenever Brashard Smith is on a list. So he is a converted wide receiver. He has played one season of running back at SMU, correct?
Correct.
So you're projecting that Brashard Smith could be a starting level running back within about a season in the NFL?
I believe so, just because of how much he's shown improvement in his vision behind the line of scrimmage this year. For a guy as a smaller running back under the 6-foot threshold that doesn't have the strength prowess, he showed that he's able to dissect blocks, shuffle through when the gap isn't there for him, and find open lanes for himself. For a converted wide receiver, even Tyrone Tracy didn't have that to the Brashard Smith level that he has had this year. Tyrone Tracy had more of the strength profile, more of a bowling ball presence, was able to truck people over and really get those extra yards after contact. That's not going to be Brashard Smith's game. But when I tell you Brashard Smith has way better vision behind the line of scrimmage, it is very impressive from a converted wide receiver.
Cool. So before we jump into your final positional board, do you want to introduce yourself to everybody, let them know kind of who you are and how they can find your content?
Yep. Josh Townsend. You can follow me on Twitter at juice_T23. We're with Scouts Eye View as well. So you're going to get South Region college prospect scouting reports from me coming here in the near future. After this live stream video, you're going to get a list of all these guys in a thread on my Twitter page. After we're done defense next week, you're going to get the full top 100 big board from me for you guys to access and roast me down in the comments below. But we got over 250 players graded so far. We got another 125 or so to go. Been doing this since the beginning of summer, getting from summer scouting, in-season scouting, and now we're into draft season. So when I tell you we at the Draft Professor have put a lot of time into this, you won't find almost any place that has put more effort into this than we have.
Yeah. So I definitely want to second the effort. So Josh and I are here, and then behind the scenes, there's 35 more of us at the Draft Professor. So we have 37 podcasters bringing you daily draft content. This is the second podcast we've had today. Mm-hmm. So every Monday at 7, there's a 2-round mock. And then Jake and Josh are here at 9:15. And as we've mentioned before, Jake isn't here right now. And you can catch him on his Morning Glory show. I believe it's Thursday mornings at 7 Central. Give the channel a follow at NFL Draft Fanatic. No, I am Fanatic. Please hit that subscribe on YouTube. So our YouTube subscribers are growing. Thank you, everybody that has already subscribed. But if you have not subscribed yet, please and thank you. That subscribe means a lot as far as the YouTube algorithm goes. And the more people that subscribe, the more people that will see our content that haven't subscribed yet. So it's all part of their algorithm. That being said, tomorrow there's 2 podcasts. You will catch Randall doing a safety big board with John. And then after that, Parker is going to explain what shadow teams are. So if you like the draft and you're into fantasy football, shadow teams is a way to do fantasy football with players in the draft, including offensive linemen. So he's explained it to me. I'm looking forward to that podcast. That is at 10 Eastern tomorrow night. So check out shadow teams if you like fantasy football. That being said, Josh has 15 wide receivers in his top 100. And this might be the richest I've seen anybody on the wide receiver class. So you have all 15 of these guys in your top 100?
Yeah. And we've done a thing on this offensive side where I've snuck people right outside my top 100 into this. Really, I have 112 players graded in my rounds 1 through 3. So you're getting a little bit of an extra players, but all 15 of these guys fit inside that top 100 for me. And that's give a preface for this before we get into this list. I love everything about Tez Johnson. I'm so sorry he's not on this list. He is one of my favorite wide receivers in this entire draft class, but you can only be so good at that weight. And I was a Tank Dell lover, and we've seen what's happened to Tank Dell. So you can only, with this wide receiver class, you can only have so many up here. But we'll get it kicked off. We'll start it from the bottom top. Ty Felton sneaks in as my 91st rated prospect on my big board. A guy you can line him up as a prototypical X, can take the top off of defenders, had a really productive year this year, can sit down over the middle in those zone concepts and really be a safety blanket for an offense. He doesn't have the strength prowess. He doesn't have the run blocking prowess, but a guy that's absolutely going to demand 5 or 6 catches a game and be a reliable wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3, whatever you need him to be in your offense. Jalen Royals, the Utah State wide receiver, would be higher up on my board if he had a healthy year. Came into the Reese's Senior Bowl still a little bit banged up, but participated and showed some toughness at the stem of his route. Able to win from all 3 levels of the field, even against higher level of competition. And I think he has more wiggle in that game as well. We just didn't see it at the Senior Bowl because he's a little bit banged up. So a guy that's lower on my board, but has the potential once he gets in the NFL to be one of these top 10 wide receivers, no doubt in my mind. Isaiah Bond coming into the year was a top 4 wide receiver from many consensus, including myself. The back half of this year was obvious to see his downfall in his player profile, but still has elite speed, still can take the top off of any defenders, has those route nuances to work those zig routes, work those corner routes if you need him to. Prototypical starting slot receiver at the next level. I question how tough he'll be on those concentration drops. We saw the obvious issues with that this year. And health's going to be a big question for Isaiah Bond. Will he be a wide receiver 1? No. Will he be a solid wide receiver 2? Probably. But will he be a really good wide receiver 3? Absolutely. Jalen Noel is the most underrated wide receiver in this draft class, in my opinion. Can line up on all 3 positions, X, Z, and slot. Can work those short intermediate routes. Can work the deep balls. Has those route nuances to really break off at the stem and work deep for a guy his size that's projected to be a slot wide receiver. He can genuinely line up on the outside. Toughness for days, good yards after catch, solid run blocker, but a really high intangible guy that I want in my locker room. And if you haven't noticed with these lists, some guys will get bumped up the board compared to others. If they have that toughness ability, a locker room guy, really a guy that's going to fit that team mentality in the NFL, because you can be as good of a player as you want. You have to have that team mindset to really elevate yourself in the NFL. Pat Bryant comes in as wide receiver 11, one of the beginning round 3 players that I have in this draft class. Prototypical Z receiver, shows really good patience at the stem of his routes. A guy that I compare to Jakobi Meyers, really copy and paste. Think that when you think of Pat Bryant, and I think he can give you the same production at the next level as Jakobi Meyers. Trey Harris at number 10. I love everything about Trey Harris, and looking back on this, I wish he was a little higher on this board, but my grades are my grades. He has some concentration drop issues. He has some health issues, but an absolute prototypical starting X I would start right away in the NFL. Can win on those short curl routes, can win on those go deep balls. He's one of the best 50-50 contested catchers in this draft class, has the production to back it up. If he wasn't injured in this back half of this year, he'd probably be wide receiver 5 for me. But health is the question mark for Trey Harris. If you get him healthy, he's an absolute starting receiver at the next level. Xavier Restrepo, right again. I think he's a starting slot receiver in the NFL. Guy that's going to be shorter. I fell victim to the Ladd McConkey stuff last year, and I'm a Georgia fan at heart. I'm not making the same mistake with Xavier Restrepo this year. Has the mental processing, has the sneaky speed, has the punt return ability. He'll be a really good safety blanket for a quarterback and a guy that will get 75, 80 catches his rookie year. I don't doubt it. Jaden Higgins, I think he has a little bit more upside than Trey Harris in my mind right now as a starting X receiver. He's a longer frame, longer body. He's able to make those contested catches as well, but I think he works better in those short to intermediate routes than Trey Harris does. So that's what gives him the bump from me. Savion Williams is the obvious elephant in the room. I don't think anybody knows where where to put Savion Williams on their list, but if we had to balance it with his elite traits and his lack of nuance as a wide receiver, I think wide receiver 7 is a pretty good line. Could I see a world where Jaden Higgins, Restrepo, and Trey Harris go above him? Yeah. Would I be mad at it? No, not even for a second. But if you're talking about high upside, absolute, there's no ceiling on this guy. Savion Williams is that receiver, and I hope the right coaching staff gets their hands on him because we don't even know what he can become. He could become a legit year after year Pro Bowler in the right system, but that's the biggest if in this wide receiver class. Wide receiver 6 or wide receiver 1 are no doubtably starting wide receivers in my mind. Jack Bech at number 6 for a guy that doesn't have the elite athletic traits as everybody else. We saw it at the Senior Bowl exactly what Jack Bech will be at the next level. A guy that will work in those short to intermediate routes, be a really good physical yards after catch threat, can make any contested catch in the book, make catches outside of his frame, and will be one of the best run blocking wide receivers in this draft class. And if you haven't heard of Jack Bech's story yet, look into it. If you're not a fan of Jack Bech now, you will be after you read it. I promise you. A fan favorite for everybody in the NFL. Jack Bech is at number 6. Alik Iomanner, number 5. Bill Sparks' guy again. Prototypical starting X receiver at the next level. The youngest wide receiver in this draft class. Could he start day 1 compared to these other guys? I don't know. But when you talk about upside, I think he's right up there with Savion Williams as the most upside in this draft class. The best athletic ability, being able to contort his body in those underneath contested catch situations. He's able to beat press man coverage for his size as a starting X receiver. Very impressive for Alik Iomanner. Suffered bad quarterback play at Stanford. Came out as a redshirt sophomore. A guy that NFL teams are going to be really high on coming into the draft. Matthew Golden is a starting Z receiver for me at the next level. He sits in my top 40 for a guy that has the under 6 foot measurables on the little bit of a skinnier side. He can win on all 3 levels of the field, short, intermediate, and deep. And he has really good concentration. I'm not talking about jump ball ability, being able to take the top off and jump over defenders in those post go balls, but short to intermediate, when tight windows throws, he can make any concentration catch in the book. And I think he's one of the best in this draft class at doing it. A guy that was a late riser for me, and he took Isaiah Bond's spot where he should have been on this list. But Matthew Golden is a starting Z receiver, a really good wide receiver too in my mind. And then we went over him we went over the top 3 a couple episodes ago. Luther Burden, amazing yards after catch threat, running back build, and a wide receiver. He's able to take tops off of people. Teteroa McMillan, number 2. He's not Mike Evans. He's not Drake London, but he's a little bit of both. He doesn't have the release package, but a guy with that size and that athletic ability, I'm willing to look past it. And Emeka Egbuka is the most complete wide receiver in this draft class. I will die on that hill about that. Can win on all 3 levels of the field. Does he have the elite speed? No, but he's been a mainstay of that Ohio State offense. He brings it in the run blocking game as well. And I think he's just the safest wide receiver in this draft class.
So a couple of questions. So if a team needs a receiver that can play more than the slot, so guys that are not just slot only, out of these 15, who would you be comfortable if a team needed to put them either like at X or maybe use them in a position that's not slot only?
For me, I would say besides Emeka Egbuka, because I don't really see the X potential in Emeka Egbuka, I'd say Jack Bech. I think this is a guy you can line up on every single spot of the field. And I'm not just talking about wide receivers. I'm talking about inline tight end as well, in the backfield as a motion wide receiver. I think this is a guy that can be a real chess piece for an offensive coordinator.
Yeah, but I guess maybe I didn't phrase my question right. How many of these guys can be just like you described Jack Bech, where you could pretty much line them up anywhere?
To Jack Bech's caliber, you can say Savion Williams, obviously, because he's lined up in the backfield. But for me, I mean, you would have to go down the list of like Jalen Royals, because I think he has the most position flexibility. But if you look at this list, there's a lot of guys that fit that X receiver category, that slot receiver category, or that Z receiver category. There's very few of them that can interchange like Jack Bech and Savion Williams.
Okay. And that's what I was going with is a lot of these guys are not as versatile maybe as some of the wide receivers that came out last year.
Oh, absolutely.
Which might be why people like when you had 15 in your top 100, that was something just even by the sheer number. There's a lot of people that are down on this wide receiver class, but 15 in the top 100 rivals last year. Last year, I think it was 18.
Oh, yeah. And the wide receivers in the top half of last year's draft class, we're not going to see for a while. I promise you. Even going into the beginning of the second round, we're not going to see that. But I'm evaluating talent. And when I see guys in day 2 of this draft class that can be absolute starters at the next level, they might not be the flashiest names in the world and they might not have the elite traits, but they're well-rounded wide receivers that can absolutely serve as starters. So just because they're not the elite guys we saw last year, and yeah, there's a lot in this list, I think these guys are absolutely starters at the next level.
Okay. And then when you were explaining Savion Williams, you said he needs to go to the right coaching. Would you say that about all 15 players in this list, or does Savion Williams stand out as to he's not the wide receiver for every coach?
I would say maybe besides Isaiah Bond, because we saw the decline that he had in the back half of last year, you kind of need a coach to regain Isaiah Bond's confidence to get him back in the top wide receiver we once saw. But yeah, Savion Williams, when you talk about outliers of outliers, Savion Williams is the outlier of outliers compared to any position group in this draft class. Everybody's going to have different opinions on Savion Williams. The talent's obviously there, but God, does he need the right coaching? Yeah.
Okay. And I'm going to put words out there, but feel free to disagree. But my opinion is the reason that we say that about Savion Williams is that he's going to need to be schemed more than nearly every wide receiver in this list. You're not just going to put him out wide and tell him to go run a specific set of routes. Mm-hmm. You're going to want to use him in the backfield, move him to the slot, move him out wide. He can do a lot of things for an offense, but you're going to want an offensive coordinator who won't be looking for, I need a wide receiver to do these 2 things and these 2 things only. Savion Williams, there's going to be a lot of different ways he can help a team.
And the thing about Savion Williams that's really intriguing, and that's why he gets to bump up to wide receiver 7, is because he has it in the bag to be a prototypical X receiver. He has the 50-50 catches. He has the athletic ability. He has the deep speed. It's in the toolbox. TCU didn't ask him to do that much. He wasn't consistent as being a nuanced route runner. So that's what I mean. You really need coaching for Savion Williams to unlock everything that he has. Because if you're talking about pure talent on this wide receiver board, Tetairoa McMillan is the only one that rivals him in pure talent.
Yep. And if a team needs a receiver that's going to get downfield, right? So like, for example, Buffalo, if the receiver can't get downfield, I don't think Buffalo would consider them on day 1 or 2. Mm-hmm. So who on this list, if you're looking for somebody that can win 15 or 20 yards downfield, which guys stand out to you?
So if I'm looking at Buffalo's situation specifically, they got Keon Coleman, who they're going to stick out on the boundary just because of his athletic profile and what he brings. You got Khalil Shakir and Curtis Samuel in that slot position. And, of course, you got Amari Cooper in that Z platoon do-it-all, but he's not the future option. So, for me, as a true Z, I would look in the area of Luther Burden, Matthew Golden in those areas. But if you want to get a little bit spicy and try to mix in 2 X's with Keon Coleman, I really do think Jaden Higgins and Trey Harris could really work for you guys in Buffalo. It's not what you need, but I think they could rival Keon Coleman day 1 on who's a better receiver in camp.
Okay. Cool. So Mike, I see in the comments, so where did Josh have Royals? You had him at 14. So the color for Royals there, that's a 3rd round grade, or is that a 2-3 grade?
That's a 2-3 grade.
Okay. So your 2-3 grade would imply that he is probably somewhere between 50 and 75 on the board.
I'll tell you exactly where he is right now. Give me a second. But the only reason that Jalen Royals fell the way he did for me is just because of that injury for me. We didn't see the same explosiveness that we saw on tape with him, but I still believe it's in there. If I look for Jalen Royals. He is my 81st prospect on my big board. So he's well in between that top 100. If he shows that explosiveness that he showed at the beginning of this season for Utah State, he will go up.
Yep.
Very much so.
Yeah. So, Mike, if you look at the color of the graphic and you notice that Royals is the same color as Pat Bryant, Jalen Noel, and Isaiah Bond, we're basically saying that those four guys are in that tier. And maybe you might order that tier. So I would be curious, do you even have Royals in a higher tier than Josh? Right? Because one way to read a tier is that depending upon what a team's need is, you might like the 14th player more than the 11th player.
Absolutely.
But the players are essentially graded at about the same spot on the board.
And that's the tricky thing for us on the outside grading all these prospects, because we're grading them based on like who we like more in that same grade. Like Pat Bryant, Jalen Noel, Isaiah Bond, Jalen Royals all have the same number grade for me, but I get to interchange them just because of who I think is the best. But we're not in a team environment. We're not looking for specific players on the wide receiver position. So if you're Buffalo, for example, you're going to have certain guys way above certain other guys who might be better talented, but they fit your scheme better. So that's the one thing we don't have, scheme ability to be able to grade these players.
Yeah. And it's interesting that Josh just brought that up because I was chatting with Owen, and Owen podcasts on Thursdays if you haven't caught him. But Owen was even explaining the difference between, because Owen has to scout players in the transfer portal.
Mm-hmm.
And he said when he's building a draft board, he has to watch more than 5 or 10 plays.
Oh, yeah.
But he said when he's watching guys in the transfer portal, there's times that he could watch 5 or 10 plays. And he says, yes, that person will start for my school. Like it doesn't have to be a full evaluation. So depending upon what you scout for will possibly depend on how you rank or you tier the players.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because being able to start when you're in the transfer portal is different than projecting a starter to the NFL level.
Oh, absolutely.
Right? So different types of scouting reports and rankings for different purposes. So we're going strong here on a Monday night, but Josh, anything to say as we conclude and close out the podcast?
Besides that, this is a really deep running back and wide receiver group. Not much. Temper your expectations with this quarterback class. There are so many teams that need quarterbacks, and there are going to be quarterbacks taken that we don't expect. Yes, Cam Ward, Shedeur Sanders, they're going in the first round. We understand that. But you're going to see guys like Jackson Dart push his way into the first round. Jalen Milroe push his way into a top 40 pick. Will Howard, Quinn Ewers. There are also a lot of QB-needy NFL teams out there. Be cautious on who your team picks because, in my honest opinion, there's a lot better options in free agency than there is in this NFL draft class. It is not last year's quarterback class. Don't hold it to that standard.
Yeah. Cool. Well, Josh, I appreciate everything you're doing for the channel. I love hearing your takes, and sounds like we got 45 defensive players coming at us next Monday.
Maybe a little bit more.
Maybe a few more. Josh, thank you very much. On behalf of the 37 podcasters at the Draft Professor, I'm Jim. That's Josh. Give us each a follow. We will see you on a podcast again tomorrow.